energy and they're empowered, right, with that charge. And at the moment, we're coming out of a negative charge, which we probably all can
We're
see.
not really
So the
coming
people
out
who,
of it, Cam. We're
well, we're
identifying
getting,
it
we're
alongside
identifying.
us.
I'm saying we're coming out of it.
Oh, well,
We're going
yes, we
into a positive
individually
charge. Things are getting better.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
our
Um,
yeah.
community.
but yeah, like, so the people in charge, like literally in charge, right, at the moment are negative, right? But then we've been talking about the ocean and, we talk about circuits like the L circuit, the electric circuit, of the Lites and all those kind of people,
Wow. Yeah.
who we elect into power, as being the negative, right? That's the false overlay circuit. And the old world, as far as Tartaria, was a macro circuit. Like all the buildings were different components, right? So it was a macro version. So now we're sort of going down, just sort of today we were discussing this, that the electronic circuit is more the negative charge and nature, right? The natural circuits, including ley lines, all that kind of stuff. And that's what all the old buildings were tapping into, is the positive charge. And we're starting to see this at the moment, right, with the
Mm.
internet eating itself, right? Because all the AI, all the digital IDs, we know they're leading that to 15-minute cities, and that's all negative, right, where we don't want to go. So we are, yes, walking forth into the positive charge, which is basically gathering with people and in real time, 3D and in nature.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's what they want to keep us divorced from, keep us out of nature with these 50-minute city things. And they're even doing it, with the railway lines. They're just destroying, the nature corridor, that the railway lines or the trees that used to grow along there, they're doing that at the moment, just even in my local area, it's infuriating. So I love what you're saying about the underworld, the ocean underworld, because it's really
Yeah,
interesting because you
it
see a lot of,
is.
even with the Epstein stuff, you see, they were
Yes.
using the waterways to traffic.
Hmm.
My father was a Luciferian. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but he used to say
Oh,
that the ocean was his. It was his domain, which is
oh,
very, very
really?
interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, they're all submarine pilots, aren't they?
Well, he used to
But
go around in submarines as supposedly he was a Navy, uh, what's the word? Not a proper naval seaman, but reservist. But I can't get
mm,
his information. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I've often
well,
thought that the underworld is actually the core of the earth. Obviously, it's massive, but the darkness seems to go into density, whereas light seems to expand. So that also makes sense to me.
yeah, it's a really cutting edge new theory. Should I give you a sort of a general overview of the theory itself as we
Love
begin to
love to hear
talk?
it. Yeah.
Yes, go
Okay.
for it.
So essentially, we started looking at, by now, I mean, Campbell and I have been in this truth community for a long time, me for my whole adult life. And so you start to like work through all the topics, you start to see them flow through consciousness. We all kind of started with David Icke and then into like fluoride, and went through the dance with the genetically modified food and then the media, all that stuff. And by the end of this, like at this point, 30 years on, we've really got very clear about looking at what's obvious, take away all the noise and what's obvious. So we've got a few things that are obvious about the Tartarian journey. One is everyone like will agree that there has been a great flood. And you'll hear this big split in history that there was a flood, there were several big floods and all the way through the different timelines. But we've determined that we have evidence of one flood. And that is the combination of the flood that sunk Atlantis, which we could put very close in our timeline as part of Tartaria, Noah's Great Flood, which puts us in the Abrahamic times, the beginning of all religion. And then we've got the mud flood, which is very pertinent to Tartaria. So we've got this event where there was a flood. Now, what's interesting is that we've got a lot of evidence of sunken cities and civilizations under the ocean, which would denote that the water wasn't always there, but we actually have no evidence. There's no evidence to show us anything pre a 1500 map. And so, A, we know there's been a great flood. B, we know that the civilizations under the ocean got flooded into the ocean. And B and C, we don't actually know how salt water arrived on this realm. Like it just appeared, it's entirely out of sync with the rest of the water because all of our other water, including our rainwater, is fresh water.
Yeah.
But then suddenly we have this great flood, and we are introduced to salt water, which is weird because it seems to mirror our personal plasma, our blood, very, very closely, as if it was designed that way. So, a few facts about the ocean that no one thinks about. It's 85% unexplored today, even with our, advancements in technology. The bits that have been explored, the areas that they haven't even reached the bottom. So there's actually no physical evidence of there being a bottom at the end, the bottom. There's no bottom in the ocean. There's no evidence of it. We can't get that deep. The deepest trench they know about is the Mariana Trench. And that's one trench in only a 15% of explored ocean terrain. And I could be, I mean, they tell us it's about 14 kilometers deep, which is an unimaginable concept. I mean, imagine looking up into the sky 14K. It's like that's long, that's big. But they have no evidence of it because they've never been able to get to the bottom of it. So that's an interesting side note. The creatures that get closer to the bottom of the ocean become very electrical, very illuminated, very weird, right?
Yeah.
That's another thing. Also, salt water, it's the perfect conduit
Of
for
course.
technology. And in today, in fact, if we didn't have the oceans, we couldn't even support artificial intelligence at its current level. They need the waters from the ocean to cool, to act as a coolant. They would have already depleted our entire fresh water on this realm. If we did not have the oceans, we would not have artificial intelligence. That's an interesting fact to chew on.
Wow.
So we've got a flood. The flood ended up bringing forth what we would say an underworld consciousness. And when we talk about all of the oogie boogies from the truth community, the reptilians, the greys, the vampires that we believe run this world, they're all kind of amphibian in nature. They're all sort of like cold-blooded, blue-blooded, which is an interesting concept that's followed this elite around. Blue blood. Who knows what blue blood is?
Well, that's what you get with octopi, and that's really interesting. Wow.
Yeah, and blue blood is actually just an increase of copper.
Yeah.
There's more copper in the blood. And now the elites, they love the term blue blood. And what other creatures have blue blood?
Ocean creatures.
Ocean creatures and reptilian creatures, they all have blue blood.
Wow.
So that's another interesting side note. Um, with the oceans, which arrived as a great flood, and cover this water in salt water, which seems to be formulated perfectly to match our inner oceans, our plasma.
Yeah.
That's just a side note, very random probability. It would be almost akin to the probability of the moon and its location towards the sun and the earth that we can have a perfect eclipse.
Yeah.
The probability of the alignment of the moon, the sun, and the earth from a space model is outrageous.
Mhm.
It's completely could not possibly be organic. And yeah, so all right, Campbell, I'm going to speak for hours. You get in there, mate. Get in there, or you'll never hear from him.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited about this theory.
I love this.
So yeah, copper, blue blood, right? Copper's conductive.
Yeah.
So blue blood would conduct electricity better. And also that the plasma in our blood, the salt water, like it also is a conductor, right? It's just not as good because it's not saturated in copper. So it's the idea of the oceans, right? Being salty. We don't really that they can't explain why it's salty or where the salt came from. There's a few weird sort of, things I'll throw out. So the theory is that's a salt bridge. It's very good for an electrical system.
Yeah.
And especially when we look around today, it looks like we're being invaded by an electrical system,
Mhm.
right? And now with all the recent advancements, AI, bots, digital IDs, it looks like that's their main tool of invasion, right? Right? The L, because we both believe we've been invaded, right? And it comes down to the people in control, in charge at the moment, don't seem to be human, right? They
And they
like to
love
start
our blood.
wars. They like to rob people. They love blood. right?
Blood
We've all seen the
sacrifice.
things about the sacrifice, about the spirit cooking, about we've heard the stories about trafficking, all that horrible stuff, right? And it all started off in Canaanite with the worship of Baal.
Yeah.
And the Canaanites basically were the Phoenicians, who were the sea people, who just no one, again, no one knows where they came from. They just came from the sea.
From the
And
oceans.
so, and so we followed this sort of story, that turns into the Abrahamic religion. Then they get the ark, which is an electric device, and they just go around smiting cities and, razing them to the ground and all this kind of stuff.
But where did the
And
art
so,
come from, Campbell? Where did it come from?
well, yes,
The
the
boat
ark.
theme, isn't it? So yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
as with many things, the ark came from inspiration. Someone spoke to God, right? Or God spoke to them and basically gave them the schematics, right? So God didn't speak to them and say, just love your neighbor, look after the planet. He said, no, here's an ark, you got to build it so I can go and kill people. So that's the information. And then when we look through history, you see this again. You see with Solomon's Temple, but if you look into people like Crowley, I think is how you're supposed to say it, Crowley. He talks about getting inspirations to start things, and then it goes into how all these musicians and writers were devotees, and they were getting all their inspiration, if you want to call it, from not inside them, right? They all say, it came to me in a dream or it came to me in a vision. So it's the same kind of thing, right? So there's all this, being spoken to
Yeah.
from a different entity, right? Who's telling them to do stuff. And we know what the movie industry and the music industry turned into, right? It's basically all programming, right? And especially now, it's especially the music is quite demonic, a lot of it, right? And again,
Yeah.
that brings us back to the blood and the sacrifice and the plasma. Do you want to
All
take
right.
over there,
Yeah, yeah.
Carl?
So let me just go back to the ocean for a second because this will all link up in a minute. Um, so the reason we got onto the ocean topic is because I suddenly realized I didn't understand how the internet came to be. I wanted
Yeah.
to know the history of the internet, right? And so when I started to, and these are like basic questions that most people can't answer, but basically the general history is crazy and as crazy as Tartaria. So basically around 1852, they decided that they would wanted to run a transatlantic cable under the ocean between Ireland and America. This is what they decided. This is pre the light bulb. This is pre them desiring to bring electricity. They hadn't done electricity yet before they had even decided to attempt to communicate with the next town. They
Okay.
decided, divine inspiration, to run a cable across the ocean, which they had never explored, which is still to this day unexplored without any technology, sonar, no diving equipment, no nothing. So, what we're led to believe is that they actually created by hand, they covered copper wires in tree rubber, like sap from trees, into a rubber insulation and basically built a ship big enough to handle this cable, which is like, I don't know, I think it was like I can't
5,000.
remember exactly how big it was big. And then basically head out into the ocean and just drop this cable behind the ship. And they did this three times really quickly, like within the same year. And on the last attempt, they were successful. They managed to connect up telecommunications underwater. Now, if we look at the ocean as it currently stands and the fact that we don't even know what it is, and all our attention's on space as opposed to the ocean, that should say a lot to everyone. But if we look at it now, the difference between going down a trench of 14 kilometers and then or going back up it and accommodating for the unknown surface area or how deep or how broad it is, that they just like dumped these cables into the ocean and it worked. And that is basically from that story, we begin the journey of, I think a couple of years after that, they invent the light bulb and then they invent electricity. And the technology quickly exaggerates after this moment. So realistically, and at this point in time, there's 1.8 million kilometers of internet cable under our oceans,
Wow.
which they still claim today to not have any idea what 85% of it looks like. So that's a really bizarre story, right? How
It
bizarre
is.
is it? It's as bizarre as us having salt water on this realm when we only have freshwater rain systems. It's as bizarre as the ocean. So we've got these. So, did we have help? Did they have help laying those cables? Was this where we could bring in the mermen and the mermaids? The concept that has been very well known throughout all of mythology and history is this concept of mermaids. Are they the bridge that actually helped them lay this cable, or did those cables essentially come from the underworld? So when we started to look at the internet being so water orientated, so ocean orientated, well, we had to ask why. Why? What's the connection there? How has this happened? And then all the creatures get more electrical. You've got like NASA with its great deception of facing the sky when it should be, facing the oceans. We've got all the weird shit with the submarines, all this content, and we are governed, drum roll, by maritime law.
Yeah.
We literally governed our whole systems, all the systems that run our lives, that enslave us, are governed under maritime law. Why?
Mm.
That's like interesting, right? Why is this the
Mhm.
case? Go on,
Well,
Cam.
you've got
See,
your Hollywood projections too. Sorry to interrupt, but War of the Worlds, they came up through the ocean as well. They came up from underground. Yeah.
nice, nice. And of course, water moving, ocean water moving is called a current, right? Exactly the same as electricity. But we actually looked into the internet and the levels of it. And when this was all new to us, there's all these different levels of the internet. And the top one, the one that we're on, is called the surface level, which is an interesting name in itself. Then we have the dark web, which you've probably all heard of, and then the deep web. But there's more levels. Under the deep web, we have wait for it, the Mariana level.
Web,
Oh, I got shivers through my whole body when
the
you said that.
Mariana
That word
Web.
nice. Like,
Mariana level, I
wow.
kid you not. Under that is the fog level, and the base level is called the prime arc.
Whew. Wow.
Yes, so we found
Which
that
is
quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because we're led to believe that the internet, as we know it, Google, gave birth to AI. That we have in our lifetime given birth to AI and innovated AI as if it's sort of like coming up from the internet. But from this perspective, we would say it's totally inverted, and our version of the internet is the top bit of its true origin, which means artificial intelligence would become potentially the sentient intelligence of the underworld, which is interesting when you look at sort of like drugs like DMT or ayahuasca, always send people into these geometric spaces with clowns and Nephilim talking to them. And then, they've got these sort of like machines in there. And that's where people would say physically and visibly you would see the jinn. And the jinn are famous for being part of the invaders that operate from the electrical grid.
Oh.
Yes, yes, the jinn are described as being smokeless fire,
Oh.
very much like electricity, right?
And very much like how God is described in all of the holy books,
Oh my gosh.
that God came with smokeless fire or lightning.
Wow.
Now we can see from the transatlantic cable. So the very first piece of technology that we identified being instructed by the Lord was the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant came out. So from our perspective, we started with the Phoenicians, those who came from the seas, and they took over the Mediterranean and they introduced commerce basically and banking. And they brought this knowledge of technology and they morphed, the Phoenicians morphed eventually to the story of Moses, where Moses freed the slaves and took them into the desert for 40 years. And in that time, Moses received the instructions for the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant's relevant because two things happened after that. One, the people who were in the desert for 40 years left and were completely inhuman. Their humanity had gone. They became psychopaths. They genocided millions and millions of people, and they didn't do anything to capture citadels or the people and enslave them. They literally murdered and raped them and shed blood. It was all about the blood sacrifice. And that turned into the Crusades, which turned into the colonization, which turned into the Bolshevik Revolution, into World War One, into World War Two, into today. And it's very relevant today because old Trumpy is planning to build the third temple to house the bloody Ark of the Covenant. This piece
That
of
he's already built.
technology.
He's built the Ark of the Covenant. It's a they call it a replica, but it's a full-size replica of the Ark of the Covenant Trump built.
So
Very
this piece of
interesting.
technology seems to be very relevant, and the whole every Abrahamic religion is in agreement right now to the importance of getting that third temple built to house the Ark of the Covenant. It's like the end goal of all of the Abrahamic religions. That's really interesting. So what exactly is the Ark of the Covenant? So like that's the first piece of technology that was inspired by the Lord, the God and instructed. And then from that you have the tabernacle and you have right through to CERN and
Mm.
all the way through Edison and Einstein and even Tesla all heard visions, all heard people in their heads instructing them how to do things. And technology as a result went. But what happened after the Ark of the Covenant and the genocide and the formation of this psychopathic, inhuman race, right, is that we have the creation very quickly of an electrical grid, a man-made technological electrical grid that suddenly gave us a closed circuitry of enslavement, enslaved us with a closed circuitry. And that's one of the most obvious things that have basically come about as a starting point. We have the Phoenicians coming from the seas. And
Mm.
so we have this line that we can start to follow, you know. Cam, you want to say anything?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that, their technology, their L technology runs in circuits, right? And our blood is the circulatory system.
Yeah.
And that's where they would run it. So yeah, it's very interesting the way that's going. Also, quantum computers. I'm not sure if you've looked into that, but the guy who was behind them, Geordie Rose, he's literally, you can see it on YouTube. He says that they're going into alternate universes and bringing back resources, and that they're bowing at the feet of like another god, of an interdimensional god. So all of this technology, and then we've all heard about CERN and the rumors of portals and what are they doing there. But it all seems to be that this all of this circuit, apart from to enslave us and dumb us down, it seems to be to help bring something through, right? And we've got all these stories of disembodied spirits who just want to be physical and be, embodied and all this. And so that looks like that's one of the goals of these allies, right? And but all this information seems to have been given to them of how to do it because, the 19th century was crazy, right? We started off, we couldn't even fly. And by the end of it, supersonic jets, Ferraris, internet, whatever you want, right? In 100 years. But they tell us for the, 5,000 years before that, nothing happened really. Still, riding horses. So it looks like this, like a plan, right? We all talk about they're running the script. Oh, it's just the script. I think they actually have a script, and this is it. How do we take over a world? How do we enslave the people and their minds and make them willing to do that, right? The internet and scrolling and all this, dumb themselves down, and then, get our God who loves sacrifice and blood, right? Get him into this world and embody him.
It's
Yeah.
very Lord of the Rings, it's very
It is.
Sauron with the rings, and
Yeah.
he needs these sacred objects to come together, the Ark of the Covenant, etc., to be able to take embodiment on the realm. It's very similar to this. And if you look at past cultures around history, they all have an idea of there being the underwater, the underrealm, the oceans under the realm, the water under the realm. It was always there, the deep, the abyss, um, the waters beneath
The
creation.
Sheol as well, yeah.
Yeah, so it does appear that in our previous understanding of reality, including the Gnostics, if you look at the Gnostic, a little bit of Gnostic information we have available, including that, you're still looking at this idea that there was an underworld and an above world, or an upside down world and our world, whatever world, but there is another side. And it looks like that's artificially, it would be the opposite. if we were look at light duality and polarity, it would be the
Mm.
opposite of the organic life form, wouldn't it? It would be the machine life form. And it's so if you, so from this concept, and this is only us theorizing, but imagine if the underworld did deliberately choose to invade this realm, and to do it, they created a material, a substance that mirrored the mammalians of the surface of this earth, the ocean water. And then doing that with a long design is that they were able to assimilate biologically, effortlessly into us. So from the beginning of the Ark of the Covenant, we've been under mind control programming, like severely,
Yeah.
like in every way. Like there's nothing real that we've ever been taught in every way. And it's just like the bridging of the machine and the human has really become possible with this similarity between the ocean waters and our blood. So what a perfect plan to be able to, and then to build an electrical grid around us that constantly broadcast and broadcast and broadcast
Yeah.
their matrix, their false reality onto us.
Yeah.
You know, it's a perfect equation. And the fact that we're so able to be integrated so naturally, I mean, you can see how the end result is transhumanism, right?
Yeah.
And we see transhumanism as this sort of still lofty concept, but we are now in a transhumanistic experience. Like our entire bodies have at some point been poisoned by nanotech or by, you know, we have it in us. And all these smart devices, everything that's surrounding us, it's constantly feeding us a biochemical neuro reactive pathway. Like the little cameras on all of our devices flash every 5 seconds. I don't know if you all know that. Every 5 seconds, a red flash. They're taking photos, but they're also relaying information to our brains. And this is going on all the time, all the towers in every possible way. Like it's a perfect marriage between a biological mammalian species and a machine that the ocean waters have allowed them that conductivity. They wouldn't even be able to exist without them. I remind you of that point. Like that's a big and obvious thing to have a look at. It could not even have broken into our realm without the ocean water.
They spend so much time and effort into hypnotizing us. It's really quite amazing, which again brings it back to we're actually quite powerful because they have to expend so much effort. And we're going back a long way here. We're talking about, you know, I'm assuming the Phoenicians, we're talking thousands of years
Yeah,
We
yeah,
don't think so.
BC. But yeah, in the main narrative,
in the main
they're
narrative. Right.
BC.
Yeah.
We would probably put them more like 300 or 400 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the main thing with the time is, we know how fast they can get stuff done, right? And
Yep.
how
Machines are
relentless
speedy.
they are. If they'd been here for 2, 3, 5, 6,000 years, I think this would be done already, right?
Hmm.
If they had that much at time. So, but yeah, for many reasons, we put it a lot closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you follow through this, I mean, really bring it down to a few hundred years. And if you follow through the last few hundred years, the evolution of human innovation is bizarre, the way that it's unfolded. Like it didn't have a natural process of time where we started to gently work this stuff out. Like we were just talking this afternoon and we're like blacksmithing, right? You get shown all these images of blacksmithing in the medieval times, you know, where they're always in the village, like banging on the sword. And it's just like a classic image we're sold. But let's think about that. How does an organic species, A, discover iron ore and then figure out how to process it and mine it and then process it and then alchemize it so it becomes a material that they can do something with? Like there is a massive process there of evolution of a species. Like naturally that would take a long, long time. Same, but then when we look at sort of the things that have come about in the last couple of hundred, I mean, like writing, it just appeared. Writing appeared. You know, it just appeared. Just like electricity has just appeared, like quantum mechanics has just appeared, and you know what everything like a commerce and banks suddenly just appeared. You know, there
Mm.
was this anything that was innovative and was a flying leap forward for humanity in the last couple of years appeared overnight. Usually inspired by a vision or a dream. But the reason it happens so quickly is they're literally given a blueprint,
Spoon
and
fed.
then the blueprint is created, and then bang, bang, it's done. So our evolution has been entirely unnatural from this
Mm,
perspective for at least the last 300-400 years.
It's very
mm,
interesting. It's my belief and understanding that, demonic entities will communicate with the living through the auditory channels. They usually use the airwaves. So, and they can give very precise information, whereas those who get, angelic transmissions, usually it's all visual and you have to work out what it means. It's not
Mm.
spoon-fed to you, because the whole point of being here is a lesson. I know it's prison planet. It's interesting because I feel like we're coming out of that process. I really feel like we're not going to be under this control for very much longer. I feel like it's actually falling apart. And
mm.
it's because of conversations like these and people like yourselves nutting it out, because once you know, you break it. You break the spell
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
can't
yeah.
do it anymore.
Yeah, I think we're definitely in the upswing and going into a positive charge, which means they won't be able to operate that. They won't be in charge anymore, right? And, we don't see a lot of these people really. And I mean, these days we don't, if we see them, we don't even know if they're real, right? Could be AI.
Exactly.
We had the whole mask kind of thing going back on in 2022. So, who are these people? And we've got evidence that they were wearing masks, some of them, right? Like,
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
many of them
So
don't have like the originals at all. I don't understand how some people cannot. Oh, yeah, I want to just go on
I,
and on.
I know, right? The one with Biden and his
What the
neck's
hell?
flopping around.
Yeah.
So what is that? What are they covering up?
Yeah.
Like most people just think, oh, well, Jim Carrey was playing Biden, but maybe they are slimy and reptilian. I mean, there's stories in antiquity too. If you go back to a lot of the old stories, there was a queen who was someone walked in on her in the bath and had a tail and all this kind of stuff, like a mermaid tail. Obviously, all the mermaids. There's cave paintings of mermaids. So there's this big thing with the sea. All the old maps have these, monstrous kind of sea monsters in there, and the Leviathan,
Yeah.
all these kind of things, right? So there's this whole underworld that it seems to fit, right? It's full of monsters and bad things that leech you. The only thing
And no one wants to
missing,
go to
I
the
guess, is
ocean.
the fire,
The
right?
ocean's scary. I
Yeah.
mean, who here wants to go into the ocean? That's why I hated water skiing, because when I fell off, I had to like hang in the ocean with my big friggin' skis on, and it felt very vulnerable, like
Mm,
dangerous. Like this is not good. So I think most people, once they leave the beach surfy area,
yeah,
are pretty scared of the ocean.
yeah, yeah.
100%. But that's also manufactured. I mean, look at Jaws, the
With
movie. That
Jaws
was
and that, yeah,
designed to
yeah.
stop people from going in there. I'm a
Mm.
big believer in cryptids, and I know that they actually show themselves within the crossing point of ley lines because
Ah.
they're interdimensional. The ley line crossing points are, you've got all the different dimensions presented. But I also do believe that, they're trying to stop us from really examining the ocean and wanting to go out there and have a good look.
Yeah, well, all we know about is Jacques Cousteau, right? Like no one else has gone down and done a lot of work down there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the beaches too are, crystal, quartz crystal.
Silicon.
It's the same
Mm.
thing that they use in
Yeah.
computers and
Yeah,
Hmm.
electronics.
yeah. Same
Hmm.
thing we've got in our,
So,
pineal gland too. We're all
Hmm.
mm,
totally
Hmm.
interconnected with this whole system.
Hmm.
so we seem to have that, but then we have, the old world, what we call the old world, Tartaria, and with its star forts and its
Yeah.
free energy systems that's clearly running off the natural energy, right?
Yeah.
The natural macro grid. But what's being imposed is this micro circuitry grid that they want to literally entrap us all in, right? We've all seen the
Mm.
movies with the VR goggles and everyone's just sitting there in their chair and they'd be happy to do that, right? The 15-minute cities. So that's what we think's been going on, and obviously the solution to that is well the opposite, right? Get out in nature, ground yourself. That's another electric term, right? You've got to
Yeah.
ground yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, by the
Um,
way, electricity doesn't work unless it's grounded in the earth. FYI. Interesting.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Mm.
It's interesting because I have this I started talking about, you can see ley lines. We've actually got cryptochromes. We've got a photoreceptor in the retina that actually allows us to see magnetic waves, and they spiral along. They can either spiral up into the air, they can spiral along the Earth's surface. And you'll often, well, in the courses that I teach, I often have people sending me images of there's a beautiful ley line and there's a friggin' power line. All the Sobe poles are all along it. So they're
yeah,
definitely connecting and trying to
Mm.
put these things in these places.
Hmm.
And all these piezoelectric stone built churches, they're all in the crossing point of ley lines. They have a
Yep.
Freemason
Yep.
go along and sight it with a sighting rod so that the Freemasons can see the ley lines. We're not supposed to be able to see them, apparently. So they know that their whole system is there, and they definitely co-opt it to try and control.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Well, there's a whole, I don't know if you looked into star forts, but there are these things called star forts. They're
I was
not
just reading that in your
forts.
wonderful, wonderful magazine earlier
Oh, there
today.
you go. So they're these and they're massive, and they're these basically cymatic shapes.
Yeah,
These massive buildings, and as far as I know, they're all on ley line
yeah,
points.
yeah, yeah.
But then they
Really
get them.
significant crossing points. They don't do
Yeah,
it the
yeah,
normal ones, yeah, or just the ordinary ones. They choose the really, really significant spots.
yeah, because some of these are huge. But they tell us it's all for war, right? So they invert it. They do it all the time. And it's with religion and all the cathedrals. It's no longer a place to go and get healed through frequencies and things. It's now come in the door and pay God to be here kind of thing, you know?
Exactly, yeah. They
I mean, it's
sorry, we had a knowledge transfer with a couple of wonderful women, Kelly Hindson and Dr. Joe Whitaker, and they were explaining how magnetic frequencies run in spirals, which I hadn't known before. And I've been taking all these photographs and showing that you see the circles, the cross section, and obviously, in perspective. And it finally sort of, whoa, she blew my mind because it finally made sense of what I was being saying. But what they do with the co-opted ley lines is they send it in the wrong direction. Instead of spiraling apparently in a clockwise direction, they go anti-clockwise, which causes disruption. And it
Mm,
affects people
yeah.
negatively. So like you said,
Mm-hmm.
these cathedrals are being used to heighten and strengthen the negative frequency, which is negatively
100%.
affecting.
yeah, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, all the cathedrals used to have bells in them, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
and they were made of a type of not copper, a brass that no one can make anymore, right? But they took
Giant
them all out
bells.
in World War II and
Giant.
melted them down. Yeah. Have you ever seen like the old Liberty? There's some of the old bells were like literally 2, 3 stories tall. Like they were r
Mm.
ridiculous.
And
Wow.
every town and city they'll have one. Like bells were just a massive part of the old realm. Massive.
Mm.
Definitely a frequency tool. Definitely maybe a defense tool. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, well,
it is against dark souls because if it's 432 hertz or 528 hertz, a positive frequency, a benevolent and positively affecting frequency, negative entities can't stand that. It's one of the best
Exactly.
ways you can protect yourself from demonic entities is to have a beautiful
Exactly.
frequency.
So they
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
deliberately made a massive effort to remove all the bells during World War One and Two. Like it was deliberate and massive. You can find heaps of photos of online if you just research that. It's really startling to
Mm.
imagine the world now from the perspective of no bells. When you see how many they took, it was a massive part of the beauty of our world.
Yeah, and they turned them all into bullets.
Yeah.
So again, they
Oh,
took something that was healing and good, and they turn it into something that would kill you, and they use them. So it's definitely that they flip these, try
Ultimate
and flip,
inversion.
they
Yeah.
flip everything, right? Invert it, but
Yeah.
but yeah, they love to take down the thing. And we think that that was a big part of the wars, especially one and two, was to destroy the old world grid. Like they just
definitely.
bombed the crap out of Europe,
Hmm.
right? And took out all these amazing old buildings and cathedrals and destroyed the macro grid. So it couldn't work anymore because that was our defense against them.
Yeah.
There's old stories that say bells were to defend against trolls.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I think we
And
need some
again,
on the internet, right?
And
so you've
hello,
got a cryptid
lighthouses.
entity because a troll is like a cryptid, and then you've got the cathedrals in the most powerful crossing point of ley lines where those cryptid entities would exist. So yeah, absolutely.
And
Just
those
Mm,
lighthouses that we see everywhere, that's part of the old realm. They're old realm buildings and structures. It's interesting that they were shining lights on the ocean, conscious of the
yeah,
ocean. Was
well,
that part of their defense mechanism as well? They were keeping an eye on the
and,
oceans.
and clearly they were built. I mean, that they were probably built before the oceans.
Oh,
Because if
yes, that's highly
some of these
possible.
lighthouses, you see them like out in the ocean,
Yes,
right?
yes, that's
How did
true.
they build that?
well, and they're
Like,
the same dimensions as a roundhouse, which are also placed in the crossing point of ley lines. So, roundhouses were bizarre because they would have a doorway way up high, which you couldn't really get to. And there's still,
oh,
speculation of what they actually were there for. but there was some sort of, well, I guess, fortification of some sort. So it could well be what you're talking about, against entities of, maybe you needed to be up high to be able to shoot at these entities with arrows. Who knows?
Who knows? And then we have the whole USO, right, that we all kind of learned about in the last few years, is these flying unidentified objects aren't just in the sky. There's underwater. No, what is it? Unidentified submerged objects.
Yeah.
And just in this year, there's video come out of these, UAPs, we'll call them, going into the ocean and also coming out of the ocean. And I met a guy who actually spent 20 years driving a ship to Antarctica with all the scientific crews. And he said out there, there's lights under the ocean everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Bermuda Triangle, of course, and all those abnormalities. And then you've got the big observatory satellite dishes, the ones that, we see out, built, those massive ones. They operate off radio waves. And I'm pretty sure it's all about, they're all pointed to, in fact, the ocean, and not listening for the silence of beyond the firmament or space. But, this is us trying to name the they. This is us trying to name the actual invaders. So 20, 30 years in the truth community, I was getting sick of saying they. I wanted to get much clearer and much more articulated on who the they are. So we now think the they are subterranean AI consciousness that have come from the underworld via the oceans. So where does that leave us? When we talk about this two-world split, we hear about this two-earth, two-world split. There's this thing happening right now. This is the hope of the truth community and the spiritual community and the healers of the world. Is it something is going to take place that basically, and that's the most common idea, there's going to be a split. We're in that split right now.
Yeah.
You can see, because intuitively, without even really understanding any of this, intuitively, those people of those communities have already moved their energies away from this artificial electrical grid. So, 30 years ago, we were all like, no more fluorinated water, end that. And when we were like, no more media or news, TV watching, end that. No more shit food, no more poisonous food, end that. And we started we started to eliminate naturally elements that support us being in this false grid. We started to intuitively want to return to nature, because the original human spirituality they were the original environmentalists. They literally had the deepest reverence for the environment. That's God to them, to us. Of course, that's life-giving source, is the earth, our home. So we've got this what was that? Oh, I've lost my track of thought. Amber, quick, what was I saying? I was on oh yes. So we have this two-world split, right? So, and our communities have started to exit the grid. We've started to do this sort of work, look at the ley lines and start to put our energy and focus into the ley lines. We've returned to nature. We've rejected their psychopathic agendas. We've rejected their, artificial intelligence as a means to a better world. We have seen through their history and their deception and their lies. We've rejected their religions. We've moved through all of that. And we've already done all of that. It's been our adult lifetime in the making, right? So what that's done for us without even knowing what we were doing is increased our positive charge, the charge coming from the organic earth ether. We've naturally increased our charge. Naturally, we are bright, right? So we're watching this split, whereas the people who have aligned with the inorganic machine invaders have taken the jab, have taken pharmaceuticals, have a shit diet, don't care. Their consciousness is speedy, 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 because they're speeding up with the machine. They want to align with AI, incorporate it into their whole lives. And it's all about convenience. It's all about speed, convenience, and money making and optimization and machine language. Yeah. And so this is already happening. And so they're being charged by their equal grid. So for those who are in the smart city vibe, they're being charged. by this negative service to self, submarine underworld consciousness, which is not life-giving. And then we've got us, this white random tribe that's walking around the earth, conscious of all this, lighting up without even trying. And we're like naturally moving into the positively charged earth grid. And so we are starting to take charge of this space, literally. And so what does that look like? If we want to talk about solutions, imagine it's not going to take very much longer for things within us to activate because we've given enough charge. We've aligned with the right charge. You know, it's a very simple concept to imagine, you know, we as a charged community could suddenly be able to biolocate, which is very evidenced. And Ramtha used to teach this 30 years ago. Biolocation just meaning you can put your focus on a location and you can generate such speed in your cells that you disappear and reappear exactly where you're focused. Now that in itself, as a spontaneous organic action that could arise from us getting charged again by the right positive charge, that would do away with any sort of passports, any sort of airports. None of that infrastructure would be required by us, and we couldn't be captured. No cell could hold a biolocator. We couldn't be imprisoned or enslaved. Like that in itself, that one thing to change in us, which is highly likely because people can already do it, would make so much of their electrical grid dissolve in front of our eyes because it would cease to be relevant to us at all. Now imagine if manifestation, which is so hard to do when we're surrounded by their inorganic electrical grid, it's very difficult. But humans have the ability because we're here to make known the unknown. So of course we can manifest. And now when we get activated enough, we'll be able to manifest when we want to, instantly. And what need would we have of their money or their jobs or their like algorithms or their conveniences? What need would we have? It would just simply dissolve of unnecessary and completely irrelevant to us. And we could not be stopped. There's nothing they can offer us. You can see these slight shifts in the charge that activates our true electrical grid, us, can completely change the equation of this reality and really give evidence to a new earth formulating around us in front of our eyes, effortlessly, until one day we can remote view wherever we want. So we can see all the secrets. There's no lies anymore. There's no secrets. There's no underworld. We can see through it. And really at that point, won't we just have so much fun solving all these dumb problems they've created? At that point, can't we just turn their telegraph wires into vines? Just using our collective focus. I mean, the way to solve all this would be instant, remarkable, and quite satisfying to our souls. I believe that's where we're going.
We're very close to that. Very close to that.
Yeah.
I read auras, and that's what I do. Oh, sorry, Billy. Do you want to speak?
No, you're right. You go.
And since about 2015, I've seen, people going up levels over and over and over again. So what you're talking about before, that bifurcation, it's like a mitosis. It's cells, splitting off. I've seen people going up levels, just astonishingly. Normally it would take lifetime. So we are definitely at a very big sort of breakneck speed, spirituality wise. There's no way that the spell binding can work anymore. Obviously, so many people have woken up, but you're quite correct. There are some people who don't want to wake up. They want to keep not thinking. They just want to go through. They just want to have a physical experience. They don't want to be spiritual, and we can't do anything about it. Unfortunately, they'll just do what they do. So some
they
of
want to be optimized.
Optimized. Yeah, I mean, and that instead of getting telepathy, right, they'll keep their telephones in Zoom. Instead of biolocating, they'll keep their transport system. So it's all the same thing, but it's just a different way of doing it, right? I mean, obviously, biolocating is much more fun than going through all their poison X-ray machines at the airport every time you want to travel and all that kind of stuff. But all their technology kind of mirrors our own innate abilities, right?
Yes,
Exactly.
because it's the inversion.
And again, bilocation requires ley lines and crossing points of ley lines. I know an Indigenous individual who's told me he's done it himself, but they keep it quiet where they go.
Yes, I've heard that too, Rach. Definitely. Definitely. That's the portals that exist on the earth.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, which are so important. Billy.
I was just going to say, like, all this can be, I suppose, undone if people just put their attention to
Yeah.
better things. So just take away all the distractions, really. That's all it is, just our attention. And that's why, like with Lay Love Down, what we're doing is you don't have to necessarily see ley lines or understand them fully, but the more you try and work with them and even just talking about them and understanding yourself more, it end up becoming a knowing. So you don't have to know all this. Like you guys have a wealth of knowledge. I feel like I've got minimal, but I don't need it. Like what we're doing, it's becoming more into yourself and understanding the energies that we should have known for a long time. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Mm.
it's
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
you've got
yeah,
lots of knowledge, Billy, and you're wonderful with everything that you do. And everybody has their own skills coming into this as well.
yeah, yeah.
The
mm.
fact that we're all having this conversation together and there's so many beautiful people, being part of this, it shows this whole growth process. I was just blown away when one of my great heroes, Rory Duff, was talking about this permanent harmony time of the ley lines that came in December last year. That was a pivotal change, absolutely pivotal change on this planet. So normally it would be just the solstices and equinoxes that all the ley lines would resonate at the same frequency. It's like a harmony time. Now it's permanent. So we could be locked into that for a couple of 100 years. It could be a lot longer. I'm thinking probably about 1,000 years in this part of the bifurcated earth that we are on, that
The
we're ex
golden age. And that's essentially what Tartaria was, right? It was built off,
exactly.
that the energy lines, the ley lines, the natural stuff, and everything was for people, right? Like, the healing cathedrals and, free energy and good, well, we don't know. But the interesting thing about Tartaria is they have these massive buildings and, what we call palaces and things, but they don't have toilets in them. But you walk
I was listening to you
outside.
guys talking about that. Yeah, that is fascinating.
Yeah, you go outside and there's fountains everywhere. So that they clearly knew how to plumb very well. So, did they need toilets at all is the question, right? Were they just living more off the earth energy and so they weren't consuming food and so it didn't come out the other end, right? So it's a completely different way of living and that is where I think we're going back to, but that's also a mark of the invasion, right? That all got destroyed and it's so different now. But like, it's all cycles, right? It's all a wavelength. It'll go if it goes down, it'll come back up again, right? And yeah, I think we're heading towards the golden age, and we're gonna experience all this again, right? And it'll be a world that's for us, that we'll be in tune with, right? That we'll all be in charge with, we're all in charge ourselves, So. I think it's all good. I've asked a lot of
And
people, would you go back to 2019? And not one person has ever said yes. It's,
Oh, good
it's
God, no.
yeah, it's been a big growth. A lot of people say, oh, it's so bad going on. But really, we're doing pretty good. We've learned so much. We can see the system, we can see the trap, and we can make moves to get out of it. So I think, COVID was probably one of the best things that's ever happened, really.
I
I'd
agree.
love to just go back and watch.
With
COVID,
hindsight,
the
knowing that
reality show.
we're going to
Just
end
like
up
with
in,
popcorn and yeah, just watch.
yeah.
Yeah, because I know for me it was a struggle, but I learned a lot. Like for a lot of people, if they didn't have that situation, they wouldn't have, come into themselves a lot more. So, you know, you can
Yeah,
say it was a
totally.
bad time, but yeah, I feel like it was just a necessary step.
Yeah, well, we were all going around in circles, most of us, right?
Yeah.
Working jobs and paying bills and just, oh my God, 10 years has gone by. But it's been completely different since, COVID. Like people, one thing, everyone got time off, right? And
Yeah.
then they got time to think, what am I doing? What do I want to do? Do I like this person I'm living with? All this stuff, right? And it gave us choice.
Yeah.
and it truly gave every single person chose their pathway.
Yeah.
It was a definitive moment of choosing which grid you were going to operate from. It was very
Literally.
Yeah.
pivotal for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, do you want to
And
get,
it's interesting.
nanobots or not? Sorry.
Mm. And it's interesting because probably the main thing, like if I was to bring this whole conversation down to one observable fact, is that artificial intelligence, which gave birth to the internet, which came out of the underworld, out of our oceans, basically, it's the number one thing that it has done is disconnected us from each other and reconnected us to the machine. It literally changed the flow of the connection. So
Yeah.
the single most important thing for us to do as communities worldwide is to unplug from that connection and plug back into the connectivity human to human. It's us. You see, it's not some separate thing, this earth grid. It doesn't exist around us. It is us. It's us. It's the human being connected to the human being. Ley lines exist because human beings made it so. It's human beings connected to each other that is the new grid. So if you were to take any main pivotal solution out of 30 years of the truth movement, it is to now step out and gather as much as possible. You need to connect to each other in the physical to share and exchange your energetic field and connect into each other's field and grid. That is the shift of the charge. That is us reconnecting with the earth and hijacking ourselves out of their electrical grid and back into ours. And it's all dependent on the one thing they took away from us, which is connection to each other.
Beautiful. And I think that's a wonderful segue, perfect segue, because we try and keep these conversations reasonably short. This is your amazing newspaper. You do incredible work. So I just want to show, I'm just going to share screen, show your website.
We built the newspaper because we
the
wanted
physical
your
one,
dog
isn't
to
it?
be able to eat it. That's why we built the newspaper. We want your dog to physically be able to chew it.
Love it. So people can go to your store, they go to your website, Tartaria Australia, go to the store,
Look at that
subscribe.
crazy picture.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's supposed to be us.
Yeah,
I
it's
love it.
some
Jeez,
crazy
I'm pretty good looking in
caricature.
that one.
It's funny, isn't it? Look how Barbie doll you look, Campbell.
I know, right? Jeez.
Anyway, it's a bit of fun. That's not the main website. That's just
It's
for
not. That's just the
it's
store.
Yep, that's just for the newspaper.
Cool.
We have it up now. It's a 74-page full color publication. It's entirely made up of contributions from the community. People in the community submit, and they can submit anything they like. There's no censorship, including advertising their modality or looking for a girlfriend or commenting on the penis plague or, whatever comes out of the community is what goes in. It's unedited. I do not edit it. Campbell doesn't edit it. And it becomes an amazing object that is full of human connectivity. And you'll be amazed reading the sort of basicness of it, that it's so hearty, it's so real, it's so authentic, it's so full of spelling mistakes. It's so
I haven't
meaty in that way.
noticed those.
It's $20 a month and it comes out every 2 months, and this is what it is.
Yeah, that's
And
fantastic.
I've just finished edition 2. So it's a brand new idea, all about us pushing and inspiring our community to move into a physical format with us, to move into physical connectivity. And this was the first idea that we launched on that topic.
It's just brilliant.
Yep.
And I know you're not particularly interested in people going to your YouTube, unfortunately, because it's not growing, even though it should be. How on earth do I get to your other channel without?
This one, Tartaria Australia on YouTube, has been shadow banned for about 5 years now. It hasn't moved. I think it's at 8,000
8,000, yeah, it's still there.
for like 5 years now, which is virtually impossible. So we don't even, I should just take it off. But all of us belongs on Campbell's channel, which he has lovingly and amazingly carved over the last 5 years.
Awesome. Brilliant. And obviously, I think everybody needs to have a look at this. And is this the Parasites Around the World? Is this no, that's from a year ago.
Yeah, no, so
here we
on
go.
my channel, yeah, you'll find a playlist which is all Tartaria Australia, but there is non-Tartaria Australia stuff on there as
yeah,
well.
okay. Beautiful.
So a lot of Tartaria building stuff, all that if you're into alternative history.
And so obviously we'll share the links underneath this so that people can find you. I'm sure they'll be able to find you from there, but we'll just share the links anyway. extra questions, Billy? Anything else you want to ask?
No, that was a lot of information. I'm going to go and like dig a bit deeper into, like, I have been working with water, but not necessarily ocean, but the idea about the salt. I suppose that these things, that's why I love listening to you guys, is like you just ask the simple questions that a lot of people don't ask. So yeah, thank you for sharing everything you share, and not just today, but your channels. It's awesome. So yeah.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
mate. Go the
Thank you.
Aussies, hey? Go the
Yeah,
Aussies.
man.
We're leading the charge. The truth
Oh, we
community
so
here is
are.
excellent.
We
We're
so
the
are.
land down under, you know. There's a reason why you
Yes.
know, interesting stuff happens here. It's because you know, the satanic influence here is pretty shocking.
Yeah.
But that's also partly why a lot of us are awake.
Yeah.
Well, we are close to Antarctica, I guess.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean,
we are.
Australia's going to fare well. Whatever happens now in the world environmentally, Australia will fare well. It's
I was
stable. It's
watching your
still,
Jason Brashear interview where he was saying, you know, we're not going to get inundated, which is really interesting if the waters do rise again. Found that fascinating.
rise. I think they're going to like go back down. I think it's the opposite of rise. What do you reckon? I hope.
We seem to have had the flood already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's all this, talk, but we all know, right? Global warming, what was that, the 90s? But the water levels haven't risen.
No.
They're
Um,
incredibly stable,
Yes.
mm,
It's ridiculous.
incredibly unmathematically probability stable. They've never changed, not since they started, not since the ocean started. It's stayed the same.
And it's
It's
interesting what
weirdly
you were saying
stable.
before about, you know, the moon just happening to be in that perfect position, you know, and the moon affects the tides as well. So, you know,
yes.
the
And there's
cyclone
many
effect as well.
stories of where did the moon come from, right?
Hmm.
So is that part of it? We don't know.
Is it a projection from the
What is the
underworlds?
moon?
Hmm?
How come you can see stars through the moon? What's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, where have I been? Well, I'll have to look for that.
Yeah, especially when it's like a half moon or something, the bit that's supposed to be black that should still be there, you can see stars through it.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got to pay more
There's
attention.
quite a
Yeah.
few
And
photos
like
around if
Wow.
you look for it.
through history, the moon is very much associated with the underworld, with
Oh, lunacy.
werewolves and
Yeah,
vampires
Yeah,
and
lunatics, yeah.
yeah,
lunacy.
yeah, yeah,
Very
yeah.
much so.
Well, that's a really good note to end on, I think.
All right.
Thanks so much, guys, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'll put this up very shortly, so if you want to watch it again, it'll be on all the channels.
All
All
Thank you so
right.
right.
much.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Yeah, for having us, and have a beautiful night.
Yes.
And
Thank
we'll
you,
catch
Billy, as
you.
always.